In the sweltering summer of 1879, as tensions simmered in the heart of southern Africa, the Anglo-Zulu War erupted with a daring British plan to crush the formidable Zulu kingdom. Sir Henry Edward Bartle Frere, the ambitious British governor of Cape Colony and High Commissioner for Native Affairs, alongside his resolute military commander, General Lord Chelmsford, devised a strategy to invade Zululand and seize its capital, Ulundi. Their plan was audacious. 3 columns of British forces would slice through the rugged terrain, converging on the Zulu stronghold in a calculated strike. On the coastal flank, Colonel Charles Pearson's No. 1 column prepared to surge forward from the lower drift of the Tugela River. In the center, Lord Chelmsford himself led No. 3 column, poised to cross Rorke's Drift and carve a 137-kilometer path to Ulundi. Meanwhile, Colonel Evelyn Wood's No. 4 column, tasked with the shortest but no less perilous route of 121 kilometers, stood ready to distract the fierce Zulu warriors of the Northwest. Wood's force was a formidable mix. 8 infantry companies from the 13th and 90th Light Infantries, numbering 2,500 men, bolstered by 4 7-pounder mountain guns, 200 cavalry of the Frontier Light Horse, civilian volunteers under Piet Uys, Wood's regulars, and 300 African infantry. Their mission was to pin down the Zulus inhabiting the flat-topped mountains that loomed over the plains, far from the Zulu capital. These northwestern Zulus, distanced from King Cetshwayo's direct control, wielded a fierce independence, their chiefs holding back warriors for local defense rather than bolstering the main Zulu army. Chelmsford knew their autonomy posed a threat to his central advance toward Isandlwana and Ulundi. To neutralize this danger, he tasked Wood's column with keeping them occupied. On January 17, 1879, Wood established a fortified laager at Tintas Kraal, just 10 miles south of the imposing chain of flat-topped mountains, setting the stage for a dramatic clash in the untamed heart of Zululand. The British invasion forces were soon in deep trouble. The British center column was decisively defeated at the Battle of Isandlwana. Hearing about this defeat, Charles Pearson's No. 1 column decided to dig in at Eshowe, where they were soon under siege by the Zulus. This meant that No. 4 column, under Evelyn Wood, was the last remaining active British column in Zululand. On the 20th of March, Chelmsford made his request to Wood for a diversion, and Wood prepared to move against the Abakulusai encamped at Hlobane. At that point, Wood was aware that the Abakulusai were not his only opponents in the area. There were other forces under the command of Prince Mbeleni. On the 12th of March, Mbeleni and about 800 of his followers surprised a company-sized detachment of the Staffordshire Volunteer Regiment encamped along the Ntombe River. The Zulus opened fire, killed 79 men, and the remaining few managed to escape. Afterwards, Mbeleni withdrew, taking with him most of the supplies and ammunition he found, and joined the Abakulusi at Hlobane. Even with Mbeleni's troops, the estimated total of 2,500 warriors in Hlobane was hardly sufficient to threaten Wood's camp. But their raiding and stealing cattle near the Zulu border was a considerable nuisance and drew strength from Wood's defensive position. Wood realized that there could be no peace in the northwest of Zululand until the Abakulusi were subdued. Mbeleni boasted of his success at the Ntombe River, but at the same time, urgently requested that Zulu reinforcements be sent to Hlobane. Recognizing Wood's column as the greatest remaining British threat in his territory, Cetshwayo was willing to oblige. On the 26th of March, Wood received news that more Zulus were traveling to Hlobane. He decided to make a move and gambled the safety of his camp by beginning the march on the Zulus camped at Hlobane. He marched out with 156 men from the Frontier Light Horse, 40 Boer Scouts, 70 Transvaal Rangers, and 80 Cape Colony volunteers. This amounted to about 400 mounted men in all. Also accompanying the expedition were the 277 native troops of the 2nd Battalion of Wood's Irregulars, who were mostly local recruits from the Transvaal. Colonel Wood left Kula separately, 2 hours after the main column. He was accompanied by his personal staff, as well as his political agent and interpreter, Luo Lloyd, along with several friendly mounted Zulus. Wood's plan was for mounted troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel Redvers Buller, to scale the eastern track to the higher plateau, supported by rocket artillery and friendly Zulus. A similar force under Major Russell would occupy the lower plateau. The two attacking parties made their way unchallenged towards their respective objectives. They would then rest for the night. On the 28th of March, Buller's force commenced their ascent of the difficult slope. The Zulus opened fire on the scaling troops. 2 officers of the Frontier Light Horse fell dead. 2 troopers also fell to the fire. Wood and his escort rode to the sound of the firing. Wood spied a Zulu rifleman level his gun in his direction, and he expressed his contempt for the Zulu marksmanship. The Zulu fired, and his bullet found its mark, shattering the spine of Mr. Luo Lloyd, Wood's political assistant and interpreter, who was at Wood's side. Again, a Zulu fired at Wood. This shot hit his mount. A gasp went up from his men, fearing their commander was wounded. Wood shouted a reassurance that he was not hit, and picking himself up, he made his way downhill to the troops' position. Wood ordered Lieutenant Colonel Weatherly to assault the position from where the fire was coming. Weatherly, in turn, addressed his men, ordering them forward. However, many men refused to attack, thinking it was hopeless to charge at the current Zulu position. Captain Campbell was horrified. This was tantamount to mutiny, if not cowardice. Campbell, along with some of his men, then advanced towards the Zulu position. They attacked the Zulu position, and Campbell was shot in the head, killing him instantly. The other men managed to kill a few Zulu warriors and sent the rest retreating up the mountain, firing at will. At this point, Wood was made aware of something terrible. Wood stared at the sight that confronted him on the plain below Hlobane. He could not believe what he was seeing. Approaching from the southeast was a Zulu impi, numbering in the region of 20,000 men. Wood could see that they would block Buller's retreat from the upper plateau and then trap Russell. Even if Wood withdrew both groups, they would have to make a rapid retreat to Kula to get there before the Zulus. Wood hurriedly sent a message to Russell, ordering him to move up to the neck, but with the advantage of high ground, Russell had already seen the impi an hour and a half before Wood and sent a warning to Buller. Buller realized his predicament. Turning back was impossible. The only option was to make for the lower plateau and rendezvous with Russell's force. Russell had moved his troops off the lower plateau to Intanata Neck to support Buller's troops as they descended. When Wood's orders arrived, Russell and his officers took it that Wood wished for them to take up positions on another neck, 6 miles westwards by Zungu, leaving a small number of troops. Russell's force departed in that direction, leaving Buller alone at Hlobane. Buller had sent Captain Barton in the same direction earlier in the day to bury the bodies of the British dead, knowing that Barton would be killed by this impi if he didn't move quickly. Buller sent him a message. The message reached Barton, but sadly it was misconstrued, and Barton unwittingly led the pitifully small force straight into the path of the Zulu impi. These men were swiftly overwhelmed. Buller's troops could only reach the lower plateau and a route to Kula through Devil's Pass. Many of the men decided to dismount due to the horses struggling on the terrain. The British had the difficult task of fighting off the Zulus as they tried to make their escape through Devil's Pass. Due to the terrain, the men who were still mounted were unable to move faster than a walk. In the turmoil of the retreat, Buller banded together a staunch rearguard and contested the overwhelming Zulu numbers, which permitted the escape of a great number of his men. Despite the danger, the British were able to get off the plateau and onto the plains, where Buller ordered them to make for Kula. British casualties had been severe. 15 officers and 110 British soldiers were killed, 8 were wounded, and 100 African soldiers were killed. This battle was a Zulu victory, but this triumph would be short-lived for the Zulus, as the very next day, they attacked Wood's camp at Kula and were defeated.